Federal Executive Council approves 2024 appropriation bill of 27.5 trillion naira.
It's now 18.32 trillion, which is higher than the 2023 revenue.
58 legal practitioners conferred with the title of Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
From all judicial officers across courts to lead a disciplined and principled lifestyle.
Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development gives ultimatum for submission of report involving United Nigeria flight.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss 2023-2024 dry season farming.
Nigeria is taking giant strides in food security with the recent launch of the 2023-2024 dry season farming in Abuja, Jigawa State under the National Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket project.
Indeed, Demola, of course, we know that the culture of dry season farming in Nigeria is not entirely new, but this latest development might not be unconnected with the declaration of a state of emergency in the nation's food security in July by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that was specifically to tackle food shortages, stabilize rising prices, and again minimize farmers' exposure to violence and threats.
You're right, Claire. And in January, the United Nations estimated that more than 25 million people in Nigeria could face food insecurity this year, a 47% increase from the 17 million people who were critically food insecure, resulting from insecurity, conflicts, and projected rise in food prices.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why this latest move by the federal government is considered a right step in the right direction. Of course, renewing hope for many farmers for more accessibility to food and nutrition for millions of Nigerians.
And projections and targets for the 2023-2024 dry season farming indicates production of more than 1 million tons of wheat in support of 250,000 farmers and an opportunity to harness untapped potentials and diversify the nation's production capabilities with key staples like rice, maize, and cassava.
Absolutely, Demola, and just to match words with action, the federal government has also been able to galvanize $134 million loan facility made possible by the African Development Bank, AFDB. Now, that, of course, will be targeted at increasing crop yields by at least 20% to reduce food inflation.
Yeah, that's good news. The deliberate steps of the federal government in actualizing this mandate seem quite commendable in some quarters, with the recent announcement of a 50% drop or subsidy in the price of agricultural inputs, including fertilizer, seeds, and pesticides, among others.
Earlier on you talked about the impact of, conflict and crisis. And if we put data to that, from the Global Food Crisis Report, we'll be having banditry and kidnapping in the northwestern part of the country, north central states of Sokoto, Katsina, Zamfara, Kaduna. We also talk about Benue, Plateau, and all those areas within the Niger, reportedly hindered, of course, food production in 2022. That's to say that conflict in those areas, impacted, negatively on, the outcome of food production last year.
You're right, Claire. And observers are therefore pointing out the need to take these antecedents into consideration as Nigeria braces to overcome seasonal limitations and meet the demands of a growing population through dry season farming. I am Ademola Adeoye. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria this Tuesday as we assemble guests for today's topic?
Very, very important topic. And Demola, that takes me back to, I'm sure you know this song. Almost everybody, of course, within our generation, know this song. Iwe kika, laisi yoko, atiyada, kuipeo, kuipeo. You know, iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀, iṣẹ́ ilé wa. Any koshisha. I say what? You know what that means?
All right.
So you must work hard, and the only way, of course, to the your stomach is through agriculture. And of course, the agricultural culture of our smallholder farmers in Nigeria is more often than not based on rain-fed. That means that farmers mostly plant, crops during the rainy season. But with this dry season experiment, which, has been on since 2015 when the past administration came into being, we expect that this season, yield, will increase and, of course, somehow declare food for all Nigerians. So we are hopeful that the flag off of the dry season farming this year will, of course, ushering, better harvest and much more productive yield for us. So on this note, I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. I joined Demola. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurazak, and the program is reaching you live on the network service of the NTA here in Abuja. And in our usual tradition, we'll be looking at highlights of the morning news in just a moment. Zenret is already seated, waiting for us. Snippets of business news, and much later, newspaper reviewer Chukwudi Kolugbaja will be joining us. And if you don't know that song we sang earlier on, you wait at the end of this program. We will again do another rendition. For now, Zenret will take over the news. Zenret, good morning.
Good morning, Claire and Demola. Thanks for joining us. I don't know that song. Yes, I do not. Let's get into the morning news. The Federal Executive Council has approved the 2024 appropriation bill of 27.5 trillion naira to be presented to the National Assembly by President Bola Tinubu. This was part of the decisions taken at the meeting of the Federal Executive Council this Monday.
The forecast revenue is now 18.32 trillion, which is higher than the 2023 revenues, including that provided in the two supplementary budgets. Equally and commendably, the deficit is lower than that of 2023.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has promised to involve Nigerians in the consideration and passage of the 2024 appropriation bill to be presented to the legislature in the coming days. Speaker Tajuddin Abbas stated this at a one-day capacity building retreat for chairmen and deputies of standing committees of the House.
As we expect to receive the 2024 appropriation bill in the next coming few days, I wish to state that the House will convene a budget town hall meeting to enable citizens to make inputs into the 2024 budget appropriation.
The Senate Committee on Special Duties has emphasized the need to amend the Act establishing the National Senior Citizen Center to increase funding towards achieving desired objectives of restoring the dignity of the elderly.
The best prospect here is the restoration of dignity, is the building an inclusive society where older people are not looked down on, making our youth look forward to aging, and making the working population be joyful.
The budget, 300 million naira, almost every senator that spoke here said it was grossly inadequate.
discharging the burden associated with the new position attained by 58 legal practitioners just conferred as learned senior advocates of Nigeria is a lifelong process requiring character and discipline. This message by the Chief Justice of Nigeria signals the commencement of the 2023-2024 new legal year of Supreme Court of Nigeria.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, I still strongly desire from all judicial officers across courts to lead a disciplined and principled lifestyle.
A new and enviable status demands that you must be honest.
The Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, has given the Nigeria Safety Investigative Bureau, NSIB, 10 days ultimatum to submit the comprehensive report of the recent air incidents involving United Nigeria Flight NUA 0506 from Lagos to Asaba. The minister gave the directive during his meeting with the heads of the agencies in Abuja. Issues surrounding recent aircraft accidents in the country and preferring lasting solutions topped the dialogue.
It was clear that when the pilot was taking off from Lagos, he was headed to Asaba, not Abuja, whereas the flight ought to be a flight headed for Abuja. There was no weather problem in Abuja yesterday. The NIMET DG is here. As henceforth, all wet leases coming into Nigeria, you must have a Nigerian pilot seated at least on the jump seats. If it's not the two pilots, on the jump seats.
The minister also directed the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority to meet with all pilots on wet lease to get acquainted with the regulations and the Nigerian terrain within 72 hours. The Nigerian Television Authority NTA slogan, "You can't beat the rich," is the driving force as the national broadcaster seeks to maintain its leadership in terms of quality of its signal and content. Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris at the 2023 NTA Management Conference and Retreat assures Nigerians of quality broadcasting through the NTA.
Mere survival propelling the nation into a realm of sustained relevance and also of influence in nation building.
The advent of new technologies and changing viewer preferences pose challenges and, of course, opportunities. Our commitment to excellence and adaptability is therefore very paramount.
That concludes the morning news. Ademola and Claire will continue the program right after this break.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service. And good news, federal government takes action to crash the price of cooking gas. That's very, very interesting news. Vivian Izadife tells us more.
The federal government has moved to crash the price of liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, otherwise known as cooking gas, as it has initiated a process to resolve challenges bordering on the supply and pricing of the products. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, Ekperipe Ekpo, waded into the issue following a rise in the price of LPG per kg from about 700 naira to above 1,100 naira in some parts of the country. According to a report by the National Bureau of Statistics, the average price of 5 kg of cooking gas increased from 4,189 naira in September to 4,562 naira in October, representing a 373 naira increase compared to the 1,299 naira recorded in September. Meanwhile, the price of crude oil fell on Monday as investors await the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC meeting later in the week for an agreement to curb supplies into next year. OPEC and its allies were supposed to meet on Sunday, but the meeting has been postponed to 30th November. The prices toppled in the middle of last week after OPEC Plus postponed its ministerial meeting to iron out differences in production targets for African producers. OPEC and its allies had in October last year agreed to cut oil output by 2 million barrels per day in November, the deepest cut by OPEC Plus since the 2020 COVID pandemic. The decision came despite pressure from the United States and others advocating that the group increase its outputs. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited had last week said oil thieves vandalized over 5,000 kilometers of oil pipelines connecting different parts of the country. The Chief Executive Officer of NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari, who disclosed this when he appeared before the Senate Committee on Petroleum Downstream last Tuesday, said the continuous vandalization of the pipelines was causing a huge loss to the NNPC Limited while describing the situation as a national calamity. Let's take a look at trading on the floor of the exchange. With business, Vivian Izadifi.
Many thanks, Vivian, for that business package. Next on the program is newspaper review.
Right, let's welcome Chukwudi Ubaja to newspaper review segment. And good morning, Nigeria. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Claire. My throat is clearing. You know, maybe it is because Claire is here. Demola, good morning.
Good morning, Charles.
I am extra happy this morning.
Why are you looking Hamatanish? Your beards are turning.
Well, you know, those of us who have this complexion, you know, we're visiting Africa. You want me to return to my abode?
You need Vaseline. You need jelly.
Please, thank you.
Or shea butter.
Actually, I don't put anything on my body, but the Hamatan forces me to when it does come. I don't put anything on my body at all.
Why?
I don't rub anything.
There's a lot that the Hamatan does.
Yeah.
And that's why, especially on food security. So it hits back. It hits farmers very bad.
You're right.
Okay.
Let's hit the newspaper review.
Okay, let's go.
I have the Daily Sun with me, and below the nameplates, war over judiciary, courts pushing Nigeria to anarchy, body judge. We won't replace law with mob emotions, CGN. Tinubu ready to implement reforms, Fagbemi. The story can be found on page 6. Police alleged protest plot by faceless group in Kano Police. That's the story is on page 29. Gunmen killed 2 police officers in Imo. The story is on page 4. President reappoints NNPCL GCO. Mele Kyari names board members. The story can be found on page 24. Federal government begins repair of collapsed roads from December 1st, says Minister. The story is on page 29. That's good news. I mean, the repairs of federal roads across the country.
You know, many of us, may I interject?
Yes, you can.
Many of us always think Christmas is coming. It's not only Christmas. Christmas is just a Christian festival. The roads need to be repaired first and foremost for commercial purposes. Imagine what our farmers suffer when they cannot take their produce, through those roads. This is very salutary. This is a very good piece of news. Wonderful piece of news. And the roads are bad almost everywhere. So it's a big job.
It is. It's a cheery news. Okay. Then we have OB in London says Africa right destination for investment. That story is on page 29. Nasarawa gubernatorial issues, violent clash over appeal court judgment. That story is on page 5. Army vehicle allegedly crashes into protesters, injures 3. Then we have the FEC approves 27 trillion naira as 2024 budget. President presents appropriation bill tomorrow. Orders commencement of 100 billion road repair projects. The story is on page 24. And moving on to Daily Trust. The Daily Trust, we have FEC raises 2024 budget as Tinubu presents 27.5 trillion tomorrow. The story is on page 19 on the Daily Trust. Fresh protests hit Kano over governorship dispute as police arrest 7. Tinubu reappoints Kerry. Will never be overwhelmed by mob, says CGN. Judges must avoid embarrassing judiciary. Yadudu. Courts deciding election winners bad for PDP elders. The story is on page 11. Then we have the FARC amount shared by states, local governments in 2 years. States, local government cry for development despite sharing 8.8 trillion in 2 years. Delta River, Akwa Ibom gets lion's share. CSO flay leaders' failure, seek accountability. Fund includes salaries, overheads, orders, amount enough to build 16,000 hospitals, 4,000 kilometer roads. And this story can be found on page 4. Claire.
Thank you. I was just trying to see if I could find details of the federal government repair roads. You talked about, and I just was yes, I wanted to know what sections of the roads that would really attract.
The roads across the country.
Have they been earmarked?
Across the country.
Yes, across the country. It's on page 29. I wanted to know what segments of the roads, because it's one thing. I mean, this is routine, really. Towards the end of every year, repair maintenance work, is carried out on most major federal roads, and that's of course to reduce carnage, road accidents, and to enable those going for the holidays usable. Yes, usable. But what happens after that? This should be something that should be routine. It should be a routine project.
Before now we used to have these maintenance gangs.
Yes, where you have
FEMA.
Yes, FEMA and SEMA.
And sometimes they really do a good job.
It
is not extensive.
You don't wait until those roads collapse. And again, to go with the Chukwudi, once that is done, also provide security. The security agencies must ensure that there's adequate security for those who go by the road. I, for one, I love traveling by the road because it enables me, it gives me the opportunity to be able to, assess and enjoy the scenery.
Claire, don't go there about enjoying driving and all that. Because when I was in Jos, I could just take all that sweep from when
the vegetation
when you pass the Hawan Kibo and you're heading down. The flowers on the sides of the road.
Yes.
You stop actually to admire nature.
Yeah, so a lot of people stopped going by the road. In fact, a lot of people, stopped traveling because of insecurity, because of fear of being, taken forcefully.
I think government is addressing the issue.
Gentlemen and ladies, sorry, Claire.
Yes.
Tinubu presents budget Wednesday. Federal Executive Council okays $1 billion loan.
You should have allowed me to land on what I was saying, Chukwudi. Yes, I think security is also very important.
You mentioned it.
Yes, it's very important. I have landed. Go ahead.
For the sake of it.
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't taken my punch.
Tinubu presents a budget.
I haven't taken my punch.
The
punch.
Okay.
Yes, I got carried away by that.
I thought the analysis would be more important than the listing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll just quickly go over what I have. Yes, so that you can quickly have. All the other stories have been read, except of course appeal court judgment, fresh protests rocks Kano, Borno villagers jubilate over Boko Haram commander's killing, and appeal court says Kaduna speaker orders rerun. Those are some of the major stories. The others, we've had the benchmark to the budget.
Yes.
The federal government is, benchmarking from $700 to $750.
Yes.
And then, of course, exchange. Yes.
They've carried out their analysis and seen what seems to be more realistic. Yeah, the mob. A top policeman was saying that we cannot, succumb to the mob. People are free to protest election verdicts and all that. Civic participation is a part of democracy, but you never do it to the point that you threaten law and order. That's what the policeman was saying there. Was it a policeman? Whoever. Now, Tinubu presents budget Wednesday. Federal Executive Council okays $1 billion loan. Now, when we talk about our budget, the other time we were talking about source and application. What matters to me much is where is the money going to come from to finance, implement whatever estimates we're going to put forward from Wednesday. And that takes me to an appointment that I find exciting. Tinubu names Akinye NNPC chair, reappoints Kyari CEO. Congratulations, Kyari. It means you have been doing well. But Akinye had the privilege of interviewing just a month ago. And when he talked to me about how the IGR of Lagos was raised, I was excited. I don't know economics, but this man excited me. He mentioned up to the point that they had to move into the markets. The yellow jars were given cars to motivate rates from market women. He said any school that took in children without meeting some tax needs, they get penalized. I think this man is going to...
Thank you very much, Hooks.
Yeah, it's just that he's the chair. He's not quite the CEO, but I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
IGR means a lot of things to this government.
You're correct, Hooks.
Yes.
Thank you. That's how far we can go on newspaper review this morning. You're welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. Before we kickstart our conversation, which is on 2023-2024 dry season farming, let's take this backgrounder put together by Tokbe Alabi.
Dry season farming is an agricultural technique used to help farmers manage the effects of drought, particularly in regions with long dry season. This technique involves planting drought-resistant crops such as sorghum, millet, wheat, and legumes, as well as utilizing new irrigation techniques such as drip irrigation and rainwater harvesting. The concept of dry season farming helps farmers to conserve water, increase crop production, and reduce soil erosion, while ultimately helping them to better manage the effects of drought. Research has shown that September, October, or November is suitable to grow wheat, and in Nigeria, wheat is grown mostly in Borno, Bauchi, Yobe, Kano, Jigawa, and Zamfara states. The federal government commenced the dry season cultivation of wheat on over 200,000 hectares of land, with an expected yield of 1,250,000 metric tons, which will be derived from the dry season wheat farming. Due to climatic requirements, wheat production in Nigeria is exclusive to a few, rendering already limited domestic production vulnerable to the region's insecurity challenges. What the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari, did by flagging off the 2023-2024 dry season farming is perceived as part of response to the Presidential Declaration of State of Emergency on Food Security, seen by many as a welcome development. But to achieve these laudable goals, government must be seen to be committed to ensuring that the support gets to the 150,000 to 250,000 farmers who are to cultivate the projected 200,000 to 250,000 hectares of land. Accordingly, stakeholders are of the opinion that the program will be technology-driven, thus guaranteeing transparency and accountability in the provision of support services like extension, insurance, and additional funding. With the launch of the 2023-2024 dry season farming, what's next? And what are the expected deliverables? These and more are what our guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be focusing on.
Indeed, and that's our focus. dry season farming. Thank you, Dr. Alabi, for the background report. We have our guests seated right here in the studio. Let me begin our introductions. First, we have the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and, of course, Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, right here with us in the studio. Distinguished Senator, good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
Also here with us is Engineer Abdullahi Garba Abubakar. He's Director, Federal Department of Agriculture. We'd like to welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also joining us in the studio is Ishaku Buba, Deputy Director of Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. He is the National Coordinator of the Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket. Glad to have you join us.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. We also have Architect Kabiru Ibrahim, President of Farmers Association of Nigeria, and also is the Acting Chairman, Board of Trustees, National Agricultural Funding of Nigeria. Kabiru Ibrahim, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Okay, let's kickstart our conversation with the Minister. Honorable Minister, according to the report, the government intends deploying high tolerant wheat from Mexico. Why import seeds from Mexico? Why do we have to import seeds from Mexico? And will this be a yearly ritual?
No, let me start by saying we even have the same variety locally, but it's just not enough for the kind of size that we intend to cultivate. So we had to complement the ones from the Mexico. It's the same variety. It's called the Bolog 100. Okay. It was something that was brought in by the world famous Norman Bolog. Okay. So it's a drought resistant and heat resistant variety. It was the same variety that had a impact on the Mexican wheat, program, and also the Indian wheat program. So it's a game changer. So we're happy that we're using it in Nigeria. We also have locally, in fact, as we speak now, we had the ones that we imported from Mexico, 6,750 metric tons. And we actually also deployed about 5,500 metric tons locally.
Locally, okay.
So, and then, like you said...
You think that would be enough?
Yes, that would be enough for the size that we're looking at for this year. I heard the commentary before. The 250,000 hectares is for the whole dry season farming. The wheat alone, we're looking at about 100,000 hectares. Okay. And then there's maize and rice as well. So this variety, what we're also doing is we're doing seed multiplication. We have breeder seeds and foundation seeds that will that we may have to import maybe next year. But I think we've made a commitment that by 3-4 years' time, we should be able to have enough certified seed to cultivate our demand, for instance.
Okay, Honorable Minister, I'd just like to start my questioning from the basics. The information available to us is that there will be 50% input subsidy for wheat farmers, and there's so much attention, really, is being given to wheat farmers. I remember during the immediate past administration, attention was also given to both rice and wheat, to the extent that now that promised to inject 2.7 million tons of wheat into the market. Why this renewed interest in wheat farming?
Let me say, first of all, our demand, Nigeria's demand, we import roughly about 6 million tons of wheat. And if you go by the price that we see today, that translates to over $8 billion annually. Okay. So with the current situation we have in this country, to save our foreign exchange outflow, it's imperative that government we self-sufficient in wheat. We can do it, we can achieve it. Ethiopia, for instance, started in 2018 with 5,000 hectares of wheat. As of this year, they cultivated 1.5 million hectares of wheat. They are now self-sufficient and also even export to neighboring countries in the East African zone. So wheat is a very, people don't understand how staple wheat is. From your Indomie to your spaghetti to macaroni to gala on the traffic jam, bread we eat in the morning. This is all wheat. So it's a huge staple in our diet. So it's very important that we cultivate locally. In the past, I don't want to go into the conspiracy theories about importation of wheat and what we have. But this particular variety, the Bolog 100, is the bread wheat, and it's a game changer. Okay. It has revolutionized agriculture in India, in third world countries. So we're starting to use it, and it's with proper extension. It's something that can boost food security and also enhance income and livelihoods of our farmers.
How much are we doing at the moment in terms of tonnage of wheat and the 50% input subsidy? What are you expecting? That to what value would that turn out?
Very well. Let me say something. The inputs that federal government is subsidizing is fertilizer and agrochemicals, and also the wheat seeds are given free. Let me give in context of a hectare. A hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters. We require about 10 bags of fertilizer. At today's price, fertilizers were anywhere between 25,000 to 28,000 naira. So 50% of that. When you look at all the inputs, without the seeds is also about 100 kilograms per hectare.
Is that also subsidized?
That's free.
Free.
The seeds is free. And that's 100% free. So that seed is roughly about 125,000 naira. The subsidy on the agrochemicals and fertilizer is about 180,000 naira per hectare. So the farmer pays 180,000 and government pays 180,000 and pays additional 125,000 for the seeds. Now let me give you in layman context. That is roughly about 400 and something thousand. Then you have irrigation. Because today fuel prices are high, so later we're going to imbibe the use of solar pumps, for instance. But in today's prices, in today's context, irrigation is very costly. And so you add maybe another amount of money for irrigation and what have you. I looked at the simple calculation that maybe it may cost you about 600,000 total to cultivate 1 hectare of land for wheat. And here, the experts are here. And I'm sure with the proper extension service, with proper, correct agronomic practices, you're expected to get anywhere between 80 to 100 bags of 50 kilograms. So that is to say, let me just assume 80 bags. Now, in today's prices, even though when it's harvested, prices tend to come down, but for ease of calculation, that bag is somewhere around 50,000 naira. And 80 bags times 50,000 is 4 million. So just imagine investing 600,000 in a hectare of land, even though the cost of land is not included, and you cultivate and harvest 4 million naira worth in 4 months. Even I don't know if even bankers make such quick returns. So this is a really game changer. Mr. President's 8-point agenda: 1 is food security, 2 is economic growth and job creation, 3 is poverty reduction, 4 is access to capital, 5 is inclusivity of women and youth, 6 is rule of law, security, 7, and 8 is ending corruption. Now, just tell me, in the 8, what we have just demonstrated in agriculture, we basically cover almost all.
It's a spillover of all effect. Okay, go ahead.
Let's continue with the minister. You talked about wheat. What about other crops? Are you also, which are the other crops that are involved in this dry season? And are you also going to import them?
Well, let me start by saying that this particular program is called the National Agricultural Growth Scheme, NAGS, Agro Pocket, which is partly funded by African Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank as well, you know. And state governments have also, because when we experience in Jigawa, they have massive support for their farmers. And elsewhere, in all the states, all participating states. So the federal government is also keen into it. So it's a program that is targeted at wheat, maize, rice, and cassava. So these are the four for the dry season. Okay. And then we have, I think, sorghum and soya for the wet season. For this program that is partly that is funded, and it's a budget support from the African Development Bank. It's a loan, so it's not as if it's a grant. By the African Development Bank to the tune of $134 million, and it's expected to run for 3 years. Okay. So that is to say, we have to manage whatever we have, you know, so that it can last us for 3 years. And of course, the emphasis here is for, if you remember Mr. President's declaration of emergency on food security, and precisely on July 30th, and the emphasis of changing the name of the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. So we you know, because there were so many factors that has impacted on the agricultural space within the last 1 year.
Okay, let me just again, you know, remain with you. I don't think I've heard, you know, as much of dry season farming, you know, in my whole years as I've heard within the past few months. The social media is inundated with, you know, 2023, 24 dry season years farming. Yes. You know, everywhere you go is, you know, flag off of dry season farming. And I'm just, what's the game changer for this year's dry season farming?
Well, you know, look at the effects that we have had, especially the issue of the climatic change, the global warming phenomenon, where during rainy season, you know, land is inundated with flood, for instance. So this, because what we're trying to do is actually increase yield. Our population is growing tremendously. Just around independence, Nigeria's population was about 35 million. Today, we're 235 million. And we're expected to grow to be the third most populous country by the year 2050. And probably, at the rate we're going, and the rate China and India are decreasing, we're supposed to overtake them by the end of the century. Land is decreasing. Right now, we have so many challenges. Desertification, conflict, which is a serious issue. And I'm sure even at yesterday's Federal Executive Council, the issue of insecurity was heavily discussed, and efforts have been made. We also have the flood phenomenon in the middle part of the country and elsewhere, you know, and then coastal erosion. So by extension, what we're having is that our land is decreasing. And mind you, even at the onset, before all these challenges, we have roughly about 77 million hectares of arable land, but we could only cultivate half of that. So even with that half, we're further challenged by the reduction of that space. So what we're trying to do here is that the same available space, we want to increase yield. So we want to do dry season and also wet season. So we're going to, for the same parcel of land, we want to cultivate as much as possible, 3 times probably in some places. So that is just to increase our sustainability, our self-sufficiency in food, and also because we have a huge potential for export.
As much as that, it's also a challenge. That's the shrinking of the land space for farming. There's also the challenge of enough water system to irrigate the farms. And I'm wondering, this has been a challenge for most farmers who want to veer into dry season farming. Is there a technological revolution that you're bringing in, to ensure that farmers who do dry season farming, have source of water to irrigate the farms?
Well, the water bodies are there. We have, I believe, which may not be enough, but we're also looking at issues like harvesting water. For instance, with the flood issues, we can turn those to opportunities where we can harvest water, for instance, in places, low-lying places where they can do dry season farming. My locality, for instance, for the past 3 years, they've been inundated with flood, and this year they decided not to, and it didn't flood. But they are now, the state government and the Federal Ministry of Water Resources under the Chad Basin Rural Development Authority are harvesting water. They're making, places where they can, the floodplains will be, you can
dam the water.
Dam the water as they come in, and you block, and then you can harvest
water
so that
trolls.
you can.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Minister. Let's bring in the chairman, the president of Farmers Association of Nigeria, Architect Kabiru Ibrahim, into the conversation. You have listened to the minister and the several interventions of government, to assist farmers in this dry season period. What are your takes on this?
Well, now more than ever before, the government is walking its talk. I'm happy that Claire mentioned that there's a lot of talk about dry season farming.
Yeah.
Now, because the president declared the state of emergency on food, we not only will see dry season farming, we will even see all year round production, because you do not get food security by doing only wet season farming or pockets of dry season farming. Now, the issue that we are talking about, wheat essentially is a temperate crop. It needs cold weather. So emphasis on it for dry season is germane, because otherwise it may not thrive. There may be varieties that would work under different circumstances. But for now, we have to concentrate on dry season farming for wheat. Certain other things, crops have been mentioned, like rice. Rice also can be done. A lot of it can be done here. There are some areas where they also do maize. So the whole thing is a drive towards food sufficiency and ultimate food security.
Okay.
So no hand should be left. Every hand should be on deck to be able to get the current population food sufficient, and then to envisage the projected population of about 400 million people come in about 30 years. Now, the issue of wheat, for instance, we just had the summit in West Africa and Central Africa for wheat. The deficit in wheat production permeates these areas. And in fact, some parts of East Africa, North Africa, also get their wheat from the little that we have. And Nigeria's position today, and especially at the backdrop of AFTA, is that we do not only produce sufficient for us ourselves, we should also look at the other regions of Africa. So no effort is too much. And I'm happy that the federal government is now subsidizing all these things that we have been talking about. In Nigeria, we must subsidize fertilizer directly to the user. Otherwise, our farmers cannot afford fertilizers, for instance. I'm happy also that the wheat seed is even given free. this is a welcome development, because so many farmers have complained about prices of seeds. That's why they resort to using grains in many areas, and that affects productivity. So we welcome this development. In fact, I was gratified when I was invited, to witness this.
Okay.
And I was there, and I saw the joy on the farmers' faces.
Okay.
And I believe that this is replicated in all the areas that have been mentioned. I'm from Katsina State.
Okay.
Architect
Even,
Gabriel.
yes,
Yes, go ahead.
even
Please,
the area that is under threat of insecurity around Jibia, the people are enthusiastic, and they are planning, and they are already cultivating wheat.
Okay.
So it's a very welcome development, and we really applaud what government is doing, and we have challenged Mr. President on this. Walk your talk. If you say there is an emergency on food security, let us see it, and we are beginning to see it.
Architect Gabriel, thank you. And I'd just like to, rewind a bit, to last year. I believe that, more than 9 states flagged off, dry season wheat farming under the Nigeria Brown Revolution, which CBN, of course, under CBN's intervention. And I'm just wondering, what was the outcome of that intervention?
Well,
and how did your farmers fare? Yes,
yes, I think it helped a bit, but there were some mistakes. Now, the importation of what the Honorable Minister alluded to, of about 6,700 or so metric tons. Last year or the year before was about 13,000. But the seeds were not properly kept. So a lot of the seed was lost.
That's imported seed,
yeah,
distributed
of course.
farmers.
Now, let me put my weight behind the importation of seed wheat.
Okay.
I was privileged to be a member of the Agricultural Seed Council. The seeds are graded as those that we have competence and where we can produce enough. The people who have the mandate for wheat seed is the Lake Chad Research Institute. The capacity of the research institute is barely 2,000, 3,000 metric tons. If we need to have enough seed in the country, we need to support the research institute a little more. Otherwise, because of the demand, and because you know that wheat is a staple for all Nigerians through bread, indomie, and other things. So you must bring enough wheat to this country. The deficit in wheat is about 92%. You must import to augment what you have. And the importation costs a lot of money, and we don't have it. And so we have to work inwards, internally, to be able to scale our productivity.
You talked about the wastage. Sorry, you talked about the wastage of the seeds imported last year. Can you dwell more on that and why that is so? And has that challenge been resolved? Because we are expecting more imports.
Now, what happened? Unfortunately, sometimes you need to tell the truth. The CBN had no business getting terribly involved in agriculture without the Ministry of Agriculture. And I said it in many fora. Even when they invited me for their executive seminar in Uyo in 2021, I told them that you can intervene, but you have to institutionalize the intervention in the respective ministry, because that is where you have institutional memory, and that is where you know how to do things. Now, I will tell you this. They brought about 13,000 metric tons, which was advertised, of wheat seed. They kept it in Jos. They kept it in inclement environment.
Okay.
Most of it went bad. In fact, there is a young man who asked me to help him to sow seeds. He was a banker. He did dry season farming for rice, and he lost out. In fact, I asked my Jigawa people to help him with the parcel of land and all that. When he lost that, he thought of doing wheat to compensate his losses. I asked the driver, Dr. Olabanji, to help us sow seeds. He searched and he found 500 metric tons for us. This man used it, and he was just able to break even. because the efficacy of the seed had gone bad. So the 13,000 metric tons that was imported was not really impactful in production. And I hope that this 6,000, which has already been distributed to most of the farmers, will be deployed and will be used judiciously. Therefore, the CBN should not be allowed anymore to do this kind of thing because it's wasteful. So this is the explanation I have.
Okay, thank you for giving us an insight into the farmers' issues there. And let me come back to the minister, because he said something about having problem with credit facilities, that the farmers have issues accessing loans. How is government, coming in here to assist the farmers to be able to get credit, to run this dry season farming?
Well, let me start by saying that we have basically maybe like 3 institutions in the system, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security System. We have the Bank of Agriculture. We also have the newly established National Agricultural Development Fund, and also the Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation, NAI. These are sources where, have a lot to do with access to capital to the farmers. And of course, like I said, one of the Mr. President's 8-point agenda is access to capital. Now, we're in the process of reforming all these institutions. Agricultural Development Fund is a newly established fund. We're also looking at ways that they can, attract more investment so that we can impact on our farmers. But the major problem that we've always been having year in, year out is the access to financing, low, affordable financing to farmers. Like now, even the reason why we're subsidizing is because of the inability of farmers to pay. I'll tell you case in point what happened last year. You remember the Naira redesign?
Yeah.
That was one policy that had impacted severely on farmers. I'm sure the Mr. President can testify to that. Because it came at a time when farmers were harvesting. And farmers needed money. And farmers deal with money in cash. And there was no cash. So they had to slash their prices to attract the little cash that was around. And, I didn't know what happened at that time. But the policy was dead on arrival. And it had impacted severely. Farmers did not make money. And so today, and that's why farmers were actually suffering, and that's why part of the reason that we have this food insecurity is that.
Okay.
So we are looking at ways to reform the Bank of Agriculture. You could see the twins, the Bank of Agriculture, Bank of Industry, they almost started about the same time. And I think the Bank of Agriculture needs to be reformed, needs to be recapitalized, and cheap financing needs to be made to the farmers. Now, another big challenge that we have is even the data for farmers. Today, who do you know who is a farmer? Where is the land? So we're working together with state governments and local governments to try and do a census, have a data for farmers, and also even if as much as possible to streamline farmer ownership, because the 90% of our farmers are smallholder farmers, and they reside in the rural areas. They don't have collaterals. What do they have? It's only their farmlands. So what do we do to have them access cheap, low financing, And then the other aspect, of course, is sometimes you think of religious and traditional beliefs that some farmers wouldn't want to take any interest-bearing facilities. So they're non-interest banking now. So we're trying to see how we can reform those so that we can have them access this financing.
Okay. All right,
so we're working on that.
Yes, let me bring in Ishaku Buba, who is the National Coordinator of the Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket. Of course, you're the driver of this initiative. I just, issues have come up, of course, distribution, who gets what, and, the Architect Kabir Ibrahim here talked about, wastage, which occurred last year, and that explains why we didn't meet, the target. Initially, now that was supposed to, said it will inject more than 2 million tons of wheat into the market, but that didn't happen. What is your framework for implementation?
Okay, thank you very much. The National Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket is an ICT-driven platform that was designed in order to capture all the transactions along this various segments of the value chain. The program involved a lot of stakeholders, from input producers, input distributors, and user farmers. Along the line, there are many activities that has been dormant in the past because there was no coordinated activities like this. Now that the program has come upstream, a lot of dormant activities has been activated. The farmer has been elicited. The agro dealers who are responsible for interfacing between the input producers and the user farmers have also come on board. And it's a deliberate effort to ensure that the value chain players are connected together in the transaction process. That in every corner of Nigeria, currently we are using about 106 agro input centers, which is very close to the farmers, where they will redeem this input based on prescribed input package in line with the agronomic best practices. So the producers of these inputs are known. We have what is called the rule-out template, and the rule-out template specifies who is the supplier the agro dealer is going to buy fertilizers from.
Yes, can you break it down so that because you're talking in terms of it's becoming too technical. This is farming. If you can use the local balance local capture so that we understand.
Okay. Okay, the input producers are those that are responsible for producing fertilizers, agrochemicals, or either they produce it or they import it, but fertilizer is not imported. Agrochemicals, organic fertilizers, in addition to the seed the government is giving freely, so they are responsible for that activity. And then the agro dealers, who are the distributors, agricultural input distributors, they are the intermediaries between the farmers, and they source all their input from these input producers or importers. And in doing so, we have what is called the rule-out template, which specify where are you buying your input from. The input has it been certified or not certified? If it is not certified, it will not be allowed to be passed through the system. And this
certified by whom?
By the authorities, regulatory authorities. We have two major regulatory authorities. The Farm Input Support Services is responsible for regulating the quality of fertilizers and agrochemicals. Okay. And the seed is being regulated by the National Agricultural Seed Council. So whatever that is being passed through the system must have been certified by these two bodies. If it is fertilizer, the Fish Department; if it is seed, the NASC. So whatever that is being passed through the system has been certified by these regulatory bodies. So agro dealers themselves, before you can operate as a distributor, you must have what is called sales permit. If you don't have it in line with our National Fertilizer Quality Control Act and the Seed Act, you cannot be involved in the distribution of this input. It's not only getting the certification. Before you are being certified, your warehouses must have been certified, that is assessed. It is good enough to store fertilizer, to store seed, to store agrochemicals without any interaction.
Isn't this too complex and complicated for farmers to, I don't know, is it not too
Do you,
No,
do you take time to, I mean, create awareness on all these?
Yes,
all the steps and processes.
You know, the essence of
do farmers have that patience to go through all this?
No, it's not the farmer per se. What we are trying to do here is to establish input value chain system where we make it very easy and easily affordable, timely available, and then of quality at the farmer's end. You know, in the time past, input are not sold across Nigeria. It's only being sold in some concentrated areas across the country. So when we now view that there are some farmers, they have their money, but they don't know where to buy this input. So it was a deliberate policy under the program to create what is called agro-input centers, very close to the farmers. If you check before, there are some states, you can hardly see an input center where you can go there, buy your input, even without government intervention.
So where are these centers now?
The centers are now cluster walls across Nigeria. They are in the various local government, even down to the ward level. We cluster ward to form a center, particularly if the place is centrally located among the farming communities. There's a storage facility. All year round, it is motorable. We try to design, during the wet season, we ensure that the place is motorable. During the dry season, is along the irrigation site. So all the irrigation site has been clustered to enable farmers be mapped close to where they will be able to redeem their input.
You carry the Farmers Association along?
Everybody is along in the mapping process. And the good thing is that anybody that supply an input, it can be traced back. And then if it is found that you supply a substandard product, the various laws are in place to be able to penalize you.
Let me just cut in here. Maybe in layman's terms, I think what he's trying to say is, because I also had difficulty in trying to understand this system. Now, the farmer is identified. There's a register of farmers, and they have all the data of the farmer, telephone numbers and what have you. There are service providers who take the data and clean it up and confirm that yes, the farmer actually exists. So, and it gives you either if it's a cluster, the requirement of what they need, because it's all calculated, is either soil specific or what have you, in the areas. But we have made like a blanket thing that we require 10 bags of fertilizer per hectare, and also a certain amount of agrochemicals. So that is what we are saying, that's the cost that is the government is subsidizing 50%. Now the farmer receives an alert that you go to social center and collect your items, your inputs. So he goes there, he collects his seed free of charge. Now if he's entitled to 6 bags of fertilizer, for instance, government subsidizes the 3 bags. So he goes with the money for 3 bags.
Okay.
And he pays the agro dealer. And agro dealer gives him 6 bags. So also the 50% of the agrochemicals. Now the agro dealer now sends his invoice to the team, and they're verified, and the ministry pays the agro dealer. So in the sense, this system does not, the ministry does not participate in purchase or selling of fertilizer directly.
But the ministry pays?
The ministry pays. Now, we're trying to see how effective that system
and transparent.
Will be, and transparent. Like I said, the main issue here is the data. And I think we need clean, genuine data so that we know precisely the farmer gets. In the past, when allocation of fertilizer was made, I mean, we've seen, non-farmers getting allocation of fertilizer, and it ends up in the market.
Okay. So. All right. Okay. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Let me bring in Abubakar into the conversation. We talked about the use of data and all that. People have also talked about the employing technology into dry season farming. Can you give us an explanation to this? How do you intend
thank
to
you
do
very
that?
much. In fact, technology is up now. Apart from how they redeem the inputs, We also want to see how we can bring in solar water pumps, because particularly with the increase in the fuel price, it is very difficult for farmers to afford to really irrigate as at when due. A normal water pump takes about 3 liters in a day. In the rural areas, or at least the irrigation sites, we have found out 1 liter is costing about 900. So it is difficult for a farmer to afford 2,700 naira for a day. And that is continuous. Because for a 120 days crop, you may need at least to irrigate for about 90 days. So it is very difficult for them to afford that. So the ministry is now looking at the possibility of bringing in solar water pumps that can be used. At least all these irrigation sites, good enough, they have sunshine, that they can at least have the solar to be useful.
Okay.
We have 15 states now that are involved in this, particularly the wheat irrigation. And these states are in the northeast, the 6 states of the northeast, the 7 states of the northwest, and 2 states in the north central. That's Plateau and Niger.
None in the south?
No, south is not, they may not necessarily have wheat.
Okay.
Yes, they may not necessarily have wheat, but for rice, when we come to rice, that is almost everywhere, including cassava, including maize. But for now, we are just targeting on the wheat, because wheat has a gestation period.
Okay.
It has to be planted on so date, at least by so number of days you have harvested. So these are the reason why we are targeting more on the wheat for now. But as I said, what the Honorable Minister has said about the Africa Development Bank loan is for 3 seasons. The dry season now, the wet season, and the next dry season. So we have to make use of these periods to be able to see that we have maximized the use of this loan, to see that we increase our productivity. In terms of the irrigation in this country, we have 3.14 million hectares that are irrigable, but we are using only 88,000 as at now. So with this program, we are sure it is going to be increased over the years. Particularly, there are more people that are now interested in the irrigation. But you see, they are just waking up because of this launching. Then there are so many people bombarding as they want. They have irrigation.
What about other organizations like flour mills and co?
Flour mills, they are fully in it.
Okay, they are
in fact, they are fully in it, because some of the seeds we even got it from them.
Okay.
The wheat seeds. So they are into irrigation, and there are more people now coming in to see that they participated in this irrigation.
Okay. Engineer Kabir, you talked about earlier on. You talked about the deficit. Since we're talking about wheat, farming during this dry season, you talked about the deficit, about over 90%. The deficit, and whatever we are expecting from this dry season farming is quite a short while. It's of course it's just a tip, in the iceberg. So, what do we need to do to reposition the research institutes, to be able to come up with, better, improved, heat tolerant seeds or varieties?
Well, there is a lot to be done, but this discussion, and I want to fixate it, we are talking of wheat.
Okay.
But when you talk of food security as a whole, it is far more than that. But I will restrict this to
wheat.
The institute that has the mandate is the Lake Chad Research Institute. I alluded to a capacity of 2,000-3,000 metric tons of seed production. So we should deliberately support the institute to upscale what it can do, so that we have more seed here to reduce the importation. 2, there are other technologies that should be brought to bear to make the wheat seed more drought resistant and more efficacious, less spray, that is insect resistant. There are herbicides that we should explore that will be wheat specific.
Okay.
Once we do that, it's not the size of the land. The yield is very, very important. And when you embrace STI, science, technology, and innovation, you will maximize whatever you produce in a given parcel of land. You see, the biggest producer of wheat today is actually China, followed by India. The United States is fifth. The Ukraine, Russia together, they are probably third or fourth. But there is a lot of hue and cry over all these things. But we know the history of how China got to become the biggest producer. All they did was they used AICs, that is Agriculture Intelligence Centers. They produced with knowledge and innovation. And today, their productivity is the highest in the world. Nigeria and West Africa should do the same. I was happy to hear that there is an institute or a university that is going to be created in Jigawa State on a College of Agriculture. That is really, really germane. In that place, because we have a lot of irrigable land, we have a lot of potential, the soil conditions are very good, we should be able to concentrate on the production of the wheat project and then make it the center stage of wheat production in Nigeria. It could even impact West Africa.
Yes.
The minister mentioned Ethiopia, that started in 2018. Mind you, it was in 2015 that we escorted Mr. President to flag off production of wheat and rice. Somehow, we emphasized rice. Today, we have this deficit that I mentioned. Care should be taken to really amplify the production of wheat. The Honorable Minister did not even mention it. In the past, in every household, especially for you people who work in government and you live in GRA, bread has never been considered as anything of economic significance in a household. Bread will always be on the table. The child can even play with it. No, but how much do you buy a good loaf of bread today in Abuja? 1,500 or thereabout. So, and it's all over Nigeria. So wheat is a very, very important crop. It does not grow on trees. It is there on the soil, and is a grain.
Yes, and that's again because when we prefer solutions, we should try to also be specific. That goes a long way to also help in terms of repositioning. The research institute, for wheat production, and all that. I was wondering, you talked about capacity. Is it human capacity? Is it fund capacity? Is it knowledge capacity? What exactly? What is the context of
the major complaint that I have received in talking with some of them is funding.
Okay,
it's funding. We have many researchers. A lot of education is there. The facilities are there. The funding to be able to do research and to deploy the findings of research to the real and in real time to the farmers is what is important. You see, in IAR, for instance, we had a deficit of 500,000 metric tons on cowpea. The IAR had been working and deploying so much technology. I don't think the deficit is that much now. We did a roadshow. We did so many things on what they call PBR cowpea. Now there is cowpea. I mean, if you go to the Lagos area, people take akara, take moi moi and all that, and they consume it with gusto. Today in Nigeria, I think people are resorting to cowpea as the source of protein.
Yes.
So we can do that for this very important crop. I'm happy and enthusiastic that we are doing this on wheat.
Cowpea is beans.
Beans, yes. Yes.
Beans.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
What we're talking about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll talk more because I want the minister to speak on the the consistency in government policies to ensure, a long-term investment in this dry season farming. Well, we'll take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly. Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back. We are still speaking on the dry season farming in Nigeria, and we still have our guest here. Before we took that commercials, we were asking the Honorable Minister about the issue of continuity in policies. That has been one of the major challenges that we face in this country. One government comes, and before you know it, the policy is changed, and there is no long-term support for the farmers. How do you intend to ensure that there is a continuity in these government supports to ensure that this dry season farming is sustained?
Well, let me just say something. When I first assumed office, that has been at the back of my mind. Sustainability of programs and projects in the public sector. We all remember Operation Feed the Nation, Green Revolution, the wheat program of Babangida and all that. So there's so many programs that do not outlive the promoters of the program. Why? And I believe it's because we don't build strong institutions. If we have strong institutions, then it will outlive the promoters of that program. I remember our predecessor, the president of African Development Bank, Akiumi Additional, has lofty programs that collapsed immediately after his departure. And some of these programs that we're doing now is a reflection of his own ideas that he couldn't complete in those times. So that's why I hope and pray, and we are committed to it, that the programs that we set out to do now will be successful. Once it's successful, then it means there will be sustainability. We have seen so many programs that have come and gone. Some are tailored to actually fizzle out.
Okay.
And should have a life of its own, But like I said, there are fundamental issues that we have to do first. Like I keep on saying, farmer data is key in whatever we do. Because government spends a lot of money in sponsoring programs that are supposed to be targeted. You need to track. You need to see what the farmers are doing. How are they faring? What is it that you need to do better? Extension services have basically fizzled out now. We don't have extension service anymore. Well, it's reviving now. We're reviving. We just had a training for extension workers for this dry season farming. And I'm also looking at deploying technology in extension.
Okay.
I have discussed with the Minister for Communication and Digital Economy on the provision of e-extension. We have platforms now, we have digital platforms, we have GSM, and we can reach to the rural areas through communication. We can deploy, communication gadgets to clusters or cooperative farmers so that they can sit around, and see practices. And you can even, in fact, there are technology now that you can see from the satellite. You can see precisely how the plant is faring. If it's over fertilized, it will show you.
So you have collaboration with other government agencies?
Oh yes, certainly.
Okay.
Certainly. We're working with
government
other
agencies,
yes.
NGOs, and other bodies.
That's right.
Okay.
In fact, even recently, NIDA has a smart farm that we're supposed to even collaborate on that. Naseni is working on collaboration with us as well. So we're looking at deploying technology because in your program, when the clip that you showed before the beginning of this program,
okay, the background.
Yes, you saw people use a hoe.
Yeah.
Every time I walk into the ministry, there's a statue of a big hoe, and I keep wondering to myself, is this how? This is something that's been used for over 1,000 years, and we're still using it. Now tell me, where can you find a formal industry that makes hose anywhere in this world?
No.
These things are still made by local blacksmith.
Yeah.
So why are we still using them? This is 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to change from that narrative. We need to do mechanization, and this is why what is driving our youth away from agriculture.
Okay.
You go on any high road, on a highway during farming season. Who do you see? Elderly, women, small kids. You don't see the youth. So what do we do to incentivize them to come to agriculture? Heavy mechanization, and government has to step in. But it's not that the government is going to provide everything, but government should make access to capital easy for those that want to involve themselves in agriculture.
Honorable Minister, thank you. Let me bring in Alhaji Garba Abubakar again to shed more light on, this wheat, variety. We're targeting 1,250,000 tons per year, which is quite huge, and all that. What are the varieties of wheat that farmers should expect?
Yeah, actually we have about 3 varieties in this country. But as the minister has rightly said, Bollock 100 is the best that has been tested and is having the high yield of about 4 tons per hectare. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we have a lot of this variety which can grow in all the states I have mentioned earlier, about 15 states for now. So if those are stable in those places, we have the yield we are expecting. That is the seed that will replace even the other ones. But that notwithstanding, there are small holder farmers that are still using the Imam, which is a different variety. They are using it they will even tell you that that one is better for doing moi moi or something like that. So they are using it for their own purpose. But for us to get the higher yield required for us to jumpstart and get to where we want to go, we are using the Bollock 100. There is even Norman. Norman is also another variety which is being used in this country. So, but the basic one is Bollock 100, and it has all the attributes that we really want. It's high resistant, is resistant to tolerant to heat, and is high yielding, and it is very easy to grow. Particularly,
which one is Padama 2 or so?
Padama 2 is another concept of farming.
Okay.
Yes, you can grow rice there. It is a lowland, which is suitable for growing all these irrigated crops. Yeah. We don't need to have maybe another source of water from somewhere, because the place is very lowland and the water is there. That is another
my question that I wanted to ask, along with the issue of variety, is whether that would also accompany some form of, knowledge sharing for the farmers, because probably, I don't know, Architect Kabiru, if your members have knowledge of the challenges or, how to utilize the new variety of wheat that will be coming.
Look, the farmers are very resilient. In fact, some farmers will tell you that I've been using this for 30, 40 years. Who are you to tell me what to use this? Because this is empirical. People are making investments, they are toiling to get results. So whatever results that are better than the ones they saw before, they will embrace. Now, this variety that is going to be used now, that is being used already, because today is what, 28th of November. We have only about 2 more weeks to really plant every wheat seed that we have. Otherwise, we'll go out of time, because it thrives better when the conditions are met. Now, talking about Fadama and all other aspects of agriculture or agricultural production, the farmers have been involved in all this in some ways. But you see, when the state governments simply allow the federal government to make interventions, then we don't get it. Because agriculture really takes place in the states and local government areas. The federal government is supposed to create the enabling environment agricultural production to thrive. But the onus is on all the state governments and local government areas to really partake in this.
Okay.
And that is why, you know, you have the Council on Agriculture. Every commissioner of every state comes there, and they are allowed to make their own contributions. And at the end of it all, there is a communique, and the communique will show the contributions of every state. Notwithstanding that the central government is PDP or APC, you come in there as a stakeholder, you make your own contributions, and the contributions are taken, and therefore you will have a buy-in on the policy. But this is annual. Now the general policy, which is normally 4 years, this NATIP is given more number of years for continuity, as the Honorable Minister has said, should be almost sacrosanct. Whatever you do, whatever plans you have, you must tie it up to the national focus. Otherwise, you will have this policy somersault.
Okay. I have a message here coming. Sorry, I have a message here from someone from Jure local government area of Borno State, and it says, I could only do rice in the rainy season because we do not have access to dry season farming inputs in my area. Otherwise, we can produce so much.
In fact, that's actually what I was going to ask Ishaku. The issue of this climate change, the effect, the challenge on this dry season farming. In what way do you think technology can be used to mitigate this challenge?
I was actually directing my question to the Honourable Minister.
It's because he hasn't spoken in a while.
No, let the Honourable Minister speak. Yes.
He's quite correct. Jerry, there's a rice bowl there, there's irrigation, and they do a lot of dry season farming. And I'm sure
they do not have access to dry season farming inputs.
Well, it's there now. Now it's there. Okay.
I spoke with somebody.
So it's already there. It's targeted. Captured. In fact, it's one of those areas because of the insecurity around some parts of the South Chad irrigation project. Jere and Baga is one of those huge areas that we have. So he should. There are state coordinators there, and also reach out to the state Ministry of Agriculture. Where every state that we're working with, we're working in collaboration with the state ministries of agriculture.
Okay. Okay, Ishaku.
Let me first of all explain. We say National Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket. The Agro Pocket component of it is an e-wallet that houses the entire transaction using the ICT, that you can check back all the transactions that are taking place over years. And the National Agricultural Growth Scheme is emphasizing growth. We are meeting farmers after capturing them with their biometrics and all other basic information. We establish their status at the time we are meeting them, and we support them over a time and be able to measure the impact of what we have done on them. Actually, the plan was that if we implement it, after every 4 years, there will be a graduation mechanism.
Okay.
Farmers move from smallholder to medium scale, move from medium scale to large scale and commercial. So the growth company that is mentioned in the program is deliberately in order to grow the farmers over different levels of operations. So, as you earlier said, the consistency in policy will have helped us to be able to move our farmers out of the position they were. But after implementing for some time and you stop, which means the farmer go back to the position we have made. But as the minister has already assured that, with the one we are implementing now, we'll be able to use technology to be able to establish the position of the farmers, not only the farmers. The program will set a lot of activities along the chain. If you go to dry season side, what is implemented during the dry season, and if you see the level of population engaged in various activities, the market women are selling their products there, the transporters are moving human resources and other things that is needed for the dry season activities. So a lot of stakeholders are involved. what the technology is doing under this is to capture all this activity. You can be able to quantify it, you can be able to trace it, and all the indices and indicators can be known. Before we started this, most of these things were on zero level, but we can be able to establish the fact that yes, we have supported so farmers at so level. The agro dealers were, even the agro dealer are categorized into A, B, and C. We'll be able to establish how many of the C's have moved to B, how many of the B's have moved to C.
Exactly, thank you.
So,
yes, we'll just allow the Honorable Minister to have the last say, and that will be on storage, because storage, if you produce, you have good yield, you have good harvest, you don't have where to store it, it will end up like what Architect Kabiru, said earlier on that happened last year. So are you also mainstreaming the issues of storage into all this plan?
Yes, and also, post-harvest losses is a huge problem. We have some produce that are as high, losses as high as 50 to 60%. In most cases, it's about 20-30%. But storage is mainly it's one of those factors. The other factor is also harvesting. For instance, we still, like I said, let's go back to the same rudiment way of harvesting. You go to any harvested field of rice, you see rice scattered on the floor. That is a lot of waste. But if we use, mechanization, combined harvesters and things like that, you reduce these losses. Storage is also a very vital. We have silo complexes, some at various stages of completion. Some have been concessioned out, and we're going to look into those and try to see how we can provide storage.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Yes.
I just want a parting shot from the President of the Farmers Association. Let's just, in 60 seconds, the role of the Farmers Association and cooperatives in all this dry season.
Well, we have a dual role. One, we sensitize our membership to the need to do dry season farming, whether there is support or not. Two, we tell them, and like I'm doing here now, we embrace what is going on, we encourage it to go on, but we want to say one thing. When you do monitoring and evaluation, put a farmer in the team. We must monitor and evaluate all the results that Buba has been talking about. Let us be able to see them. Let us be able to tell the farmers that, look, your friends who got this were there. Now they are here. You can be here and even more. You can be rich.
Architect Kabiru Ibrahim, yes, thank you. And thank you for making it short. Architect Kabiru Ibrahim, President of Farmers Association of Nigeria. Thank you, as always, for your insights. And let me also appreciate Ishaku Buba, who is the Deputy Director, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Of course, he's the National Coordinator of the Agricultural Growth Scheme and Agro Pocket. Thank you very much for joining us. Engineer Abdullahi Garba Abubakar is the Director of Federal Department of Agriculture. We thank you for coming to Good Morning Nigeria. And Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Distinguished Senator Abubakar Kyari. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And we wish you luck.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
wish